up, friends? We're back. We're Black and Curious. I'm Kandron.
Hey, hey, it is Dehjai.
And we're back. If you've never been here before, we do pop culture, real life, and the cross section between the two. So, our topic for this series of conversations is going to be around life design. Full disclosure, I am personally interested in this, and this is sort of a how do you say this? This is a selfish endeavor in that I'm working on being more intentional and more intentional about designing my own life. And so I wanted to delve into this process because I thought it was one thing. I thought it was like a broad term of things that you can do to like be intentional, but it's not. It's an actual process. And there's a TED talk. I will drop it down below where the creators of this sort of philosophy, one of the creators, he talks through the entire process. It's very helpful, especially if you find yourself in a place where you may feel stuck. So there's 5 steps. So we're going to talk through each step individually in a series of conversations. The 5 steps are connecting the dots about your life view, your work, and your beliefs. Step 2 is identifying your problems and reframing them so that things that may get you stuck or have you stuck, you reframe them into problems that you can actually solve. The third step is ideating, or sort of creating 3 different 5-year versions of yourself. The fourth step is prototyping, so testing those ideas that you came up in the previous section, testing them either through asking questions or doing more practical stuff on your own. And the fifth step is choosing well, which entails letting go and moving on. So we're going to start with step 1, connecting the dots.
The connecting the dots is probably the hardest thing for people to do.
Yeah.
Because life is filled with so many distractions, and all of the distractions that we come across, to be honest with you, are designed to keep your focus away from yourself. And so like for me, I think that, and this is based on like small population of people that I've spoken to, but for like my understanding, most people who get to a place of like wanting their life to be different, it's clearly out of a pace of frustration, one, but two, also acknowledging what, well, what is the latter, like what is it that you're wanting to replace it with? Do you actually know what that is, and why it is that you are not there? Like connecting those dots in that way. Like understanding what life choices and decisions that you've made to seat you in the position that you're in. And not to say that, getting to where you are currently is a bad place. It's just that's the route that you took. There is no right or wrong.
Right. So just really quick, 3 things that he talked about as fallacies and things that we kind of even almost have to undo our thinking around is that we're really trying to figure out what we're going to grow into next. Like there is no necessarily like a final destination, you just figure out what's next, within the next 5 years. One of the fallacies he talked about was passion, and how people are really like, a lot of people are like, well, what are you passionate about? That's what you should be doing. And it's, most people have more than one. And
some people are multi-hyphenate.
Exactly. So that's where, I feel like even with that, I feel like that maybe have a commentary on grind culture in there, because we're all here trying to chase all these different passions. And it's like, it is a fallacy to think that you would just be singularly passionate.
Right. Or that you're
Most
going to
people
like
are
one
not
thing
that.
forever. Some people might. Some people, that might really be your thing. And if that's your thing, then that's your thing. Ain't
Yeah,
nothing
of
wrong with
course.
that. But there is no, like this, I think the generations prior to us have this staunch belief that you have to choose one path. Like kind of like religion in this
Right.
country.
Yeah.
There's one way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. So the other two fallacies that he talks about is that you should know by now, and the third one is around settling, and that you should always pick the best, and you don't stop till you get the best. And it's like, well, actually, he said the unattainable best is the enemy of all the available betters. So you have a plethora of options, and you're over here chasing after sometimes this unattainable, yes, best case scenario in your brain that is not real. So
Living in the
you kind of have to like balance all of that out. And so for me, he talks about the what do you call it? Really defining like what it is that are your values. So like, what is your work? What does your ideal work situation look like? What does your ideal life situation look like? And what are your beliefs? And if you can connect all of those things, then you get there. What do you feel like is the meaning of life? And for me, I feel I'm getting to a point now where I always thought, you save the world and all this stuff, other stuff, and that's not a thing. I mean, you can affect, not save, but you can affect the world, and you can affect sometimes the people in your proximity. But those loftier goals, they're really hard, and not all of that attainable. You know what I'm saying? So I think my values have gone quite a bit from macro to micro, in that I feel now that my work life, really, I don't want to work.
Ain't that the truth?
That
Child.
is the truth. But
Be a housewife. I'm ready, headspace.
but ideally, if I have to work, it would be in a part-time capacity. I honestly think that for me and a person with my type of attention span, if I could figure out a way to make two part-time jobs amount to full-time pay, that's what I would like. I would not like to have to go and do anything for 40 hours a week. That is not what I would like.
So this idea that you just said brings me to someone who's like a virtual mentor to me. I followed her for the last probably like the last 4 years. Her name is Stacey Flowers, and she has her own. She's a life coach, but like she's also an entrepreneur. She's done a couple of TED Talks. She's a Black woman. I think she's either our age or she might be younger than us, actually. But she is also an entrepreneur, and so she talks about this lifestyle of living where she works part-time in her business for herself, but she's making, like, at this point, I think when I was following her, she was bouncing back and forth between $5,000 and $10,000 a month in her own entity, but part-time. And so like that, like literally I will make sure that I put her name in like one of her TED Talks down in the description box so you guys can find her. Stacey Flowers is dope. She doesn't have a whole lot of a social media presence these days because she's doing a different life design, to be honest. But she's dope. She still does her podcast, so catch that and check it out. But one of the things that you said was the idea of you once believed that you believed in saving the world, and like now it's more of an individualistic, like, let me save myself and I can potentially change some of the outlook of those immediately around me. I think it's the same thing in the sense that when you, instead of you saving the world, you save yourself, you still end up saving the world. And what I mean by that is, like, you never know who it is that is actually watching your journey and seeing how you've pivoted from, one avenue, the traditional avenue, into a totally different one, and what that did for you. Like, sometimes people learn by just watching others.
That's true.
And seeing like, okay, well, she did something that was out of the box. This is not the norm. So let me research that. Like, case in point, we're talking about a TED Talk that a gentleman gave us, like a breakdown of like how to go about redesigning your life. And so like, I think that sometimes we don't give ourselves credit in terms of the work it is that we have done be it, you know, like professionally or it just being like personal self-work. Like the biggest thing for my biggest flex, honestly, is all of the work that I have done on myself, like heavy work that I have done on myself in like the last 4 or 5 years, and what the outcomes of that have been. Even though it looks to, you know, some like you just are razor sharp with how you cut off people in terms of like everybody can't go with you. So even though it looks like I'm just, you know, leaving people at the wayside, it's not so much that. It's more of, like Kandron said, I'm focusing on myself and what I can change and what I can do, in designing a life that is reflective of introspection.
Yeah.
And my hope is that by having, knowing, not even having, by knowing that there is someone out there who is watching from the distance, like, okay, well, if she did it that way, maybe I can try it too, but in my own way.
Right.
Like I'm still contributing to society by effectively changing myself.
Yeah. That makes sense. I think a lot of my life has been driven by accomplishment. And I don't think it's coincidence that it's now that I've been out of school for over a decade, where I'm sort of in a middle spot in my career and sort of just a middle space of my life, that I'm freaking out. And it's not surprising to me. When you're achievement focused, you need something to achieve next. So it's not surprising to me. I just think in the next space and something that I'm working through is just peace and joy. Like that's what I want more than anything. Those are my values more than anything. And freedom. Freedom is really my value above all. And I've felt it in spurts in my life, but I've never felt it that it pervades my life in a way that would make me happy.
Yeah.
So freedom is absolutely my calling card, and the work I want to do in terms of, you know, helping businesses or whatever is helping people to gain their own sort of freedom in a way, and exercise their own gifts in a way. um so yeah, I think, and we're gonna go deeper into these sort of things that we have, thoughts that we
Different
have
levels.
about life or whatever,
Yeah.
in a different conversation. But in general, I just feel like, you know, freedom. That is what I'm after above all. Freedom
Honestly,
and
I think a
peace.
lot of people are after freedom and don't know it.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
call it different things.
And it's like the freedom to, I know me. I'm not a person who sits still very well. I like having things to do. When I was a kid, I had 150 hobbies. I don't do them anymore, but I had them and I could still haul back to them if I needed them. But I'm just a person who needs to do, but I would love to do considerably less or considerably only the things that I enjoy. So I think right now in the space that I've been in for the last few years is that I have been working and well earning, full disclosure. Well, semi full disclosure, because I ain't gonna tell you how much I make. But I've been working and,
Lord
you
bless
know,
you.
pretty well paid, to earn some freedom, so that when I decide to step off of the merry-go-round, I will have some runway. And that is on purpose, but that is also with the thought and the knowledge that this is not forever and this was never intended to be forever for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say was the process for you as it relates to connecting the dots? Like what were your dots, if you feel comfortable to share?
Yeah, I just think my value, like I said, is freedom. My work is helping people to get freedom. And what's the other tenants here? And work. So work, you know, is sort of connected to those two things too. And yeah, just life in terms of with my life. you know, travel, all of the things that I had kind of started to think about and were always priorities for me, frankly, they all fit into that same idea of freedom. So I think that that's sort of the overarching value of my life and the way that I've connected all of my dots. And if I can not figure out a way, if I can execute the plan, because I do have a plan that's going to take a little longer than I had anticipated because of what's happening in the world. But
Mm-hmm.
if
Hello.
I can execute this plan within the next few years, I will get there.
I think for me, um, the biggest thing, honestly, and this is not necessarily a value, but what helped me to connect the dots was to see the ways in which I gave away my power on a regular and daily basis,
Mm-hmm.
and acknowledge that there is some ownership in that experience for me.
Yeah.
And then from that, like, it's kind of like, for me, I see it as like frogs hopping on lily pads.
Mm-hmm.
So I went from, okay, so we're giving away our power in these ways, got it, jump to the next one. And then it was well, what, like, the giving away of the power is lack of boundaries and clarity around what your boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
Got it, jump to the next one. And then it was trying to figure out, like, how exactly I want to show up in the world, and like what meaning it is I want to provide.
Mm.
I'm huge on meaning.
Yeah.
And I realize that more so now than ever before. Everything that I've ever done since probably about, well, since childhood, has been very people centric. And what I mean by that is I have always wanted to make sure everyone's having a good time, make people feel good, give people some sunshine. And I have strived to do that at every turn, either it being me working in LMI communities, which is low to moderate income communities, or which is also I'm a product of, or volunteering with at-risk youth, or working with the homeless population, or any sort of avenue. I've always been very much focused on people centric. So then to me, the value became, okay, things that make a difference to me is to be the difference that I want to see,
Mm-hmm.
and figuring out how to get there. Like, well, what is it
Valid.
that it's going to take for me to be that difference? And then how can I show it to my people, basically acknowledging that I am a product of these environments, but somehow shit was different for me because I lily pad hopped from one trajectory to the next.
Right.
So I feel like we're going to get very much deep into this conversation. And I feel the inner life coach fitting to fly out. So I'm trying to hold on to it.
Well, I would say, just to kind of close it up and answer your question more directly of how I feel like I got there, I think honestly, connecting dots is sort of my superpower. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
good at that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
I
really good
agree.
at synthesizing a lot of information I can take in, even when people come to me, and this is sort of part of the process. Like when people would come to me and ask me questions, and I would just be able to break it down for them of where they should go next with their business or whatever. I would be very clear and able to like break things down for them or think about things in a different way that they hadn't thought before. And everybody is always kind of like very clear eyed, like, oh my God, like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, I don't really know. It's sort of my thing. But so connecting the dots wasn't all that hard for me, but I had to get down to, I think for me, it was getting down to really the bottom of a bunch of experiences, like you were saying, giving away your power. Not even necessarily giving it away, but getting down to the bottom of a bunch of experiences that I missed and why I missed them. So asking myself why and coming back to it's because of there's some element of freedom that I'm not getting here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So um that's sort of where I got that. And very full disclosure, and I think this probably, the pandemic probably did this for a lot of people, the inability to move and the inability to do certain things and travel, especially for me, it was very hard. It has been very hard.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I feel you.
and this
I want to get away.
feeling very confined has been difficult. So,
Yeah.
I that's when I realized that freedom truly is my core value. So, yeah.
I would agree with you. Freedom is probably definitely one of my core values for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Freedom, self-awareness.
Yeah.
And I guess self-awareness is also accountability, so we won't say that. And those are the only two I can think of off top. Actually, life. Another one is love.
That's fair.
And showing and displaying love at all facets, even when it is really hard to see the good in somebody.
Yeah.
I think that's also something that is a marker on my life since childhood. Like I would always look for the good in everybody, even when I've like viscerally felt like this is not a good person. I would still look for it anyway.
Fair.
Gift and a curse, I guess, or a blessing, maybe. Yeah. But anyway, we will.
I would challenge you guys too. And one thing, and before we wrap up, I guess.
Yeah.
I would just challenge you to think back about who you were when you were a kid, because that is probably a good starting point if you're going to take this journey with us.
Please.
And please do. And drop down in the comments and let us know where you are. My mom is like, I could not move you. You just marched to the beat of your own drum, and you cannot.
Hello.
Like, you just can't.
This is why we are friends.
She's like, you just can't be contained,
No.
So it's like, so that is
okay.
Exactly. So I think even at my core, being raised in a very Southern, very Black household, I was still like, no, I'm gonna be free. I'm gonna be free.
Like, I don't know what they told you.
You can try to beat it out of me, but I'm gonna be free. So those things, are probably a good place to start with your values. But drop down in the comments, let us know if you're going to take the journey with us. Tell us what your core values are if you feel comfortable sharing. If not, send us an email. And that's it.
Also, I would say, before we completely wrap, let us know what dots you're connecting. Because if you don't know what those core values are, connecting dots in your life as it relates to things that aren't quite, it don't feel right. You're getting the stuck. This is not it. That helps you to maybe figure out what those values are, or to give you a definition of it, and then you choose the word.
Yeah.
So,
and then stay tuned for our next conversation, because it is about being stuck.
Yes. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media, and check out blackandcurious.com. There's some dope things over there, and we will see y'all next time. Bye.